I do see a lot of people who have abandoned the word network. They have abandoned the word community. Now everything is an ecosystem, they're saying. Sometimes it's not the right kind of ecosystem. It might be a bit destructive and a bit tense and a bit awkward, but it can also be a bit glorious, and it can strike into the heart of some of the problems that don't fit neatly into verticals, divisions, functions, as much as people might think they are. So we have Mark, Katerina and Gustavo. It's great that we've got titles there from some pretty diverse organisations with different experiences. So whilst I'm getting in position, I'm going to ask this kind of opening question, which is how can we effectively lead and nurture cross-functional collaboration within an organisation? I think that's our kind of starting point, cross-functional collaboration.
So for me, obviously we thought a lot about this question, but the idea of cross-functional collaboration implies that there is some sort of functional segmentation, right? So the normal way of working is within function. And for me, the key to have cross-functional collaboration is to think about what makes it cross, right? So what's the common denominator that makes that we have a vested interest. So at NEXPERIA for the past 3 years, one of the big things for us is trying to get HR more involved in the strategy execution. And the way that we did that was focusing on, okay, what are we collectively trying to achieve, rather than saying what's HR's contribution to that. Yeah. So what happened in practice that in the past, business teams would say, we'll figure out the strategy, and then we'll figure out what we need from HR, and when we figure that out, we'll let you know, and we'll bring you in, and HR was perfectly okay with that. What we're now trying to do is say, let's not do that, but let's figure out what our collective problem is with HR, and then each bring our part to the table. And that's worked out, or that is working out, I would say pretty well. Not very easy, but pretty well.
And did it start with a mind shift or some kind of declaration, or how did it kind of come into being that happened more?
Observation, basically. Yeah. That a lot of the HR problems were missed because the non-HR people were figuring out what the HR problems were and then bringing in HR. So we saw a lot of collaboration not happening. A lot of people not understanding the problem, focusing on the tech rather than people not talking to each other. So that sort of catalyzed.
Instead of HR fix it after we've perhaps not even built it right, you were asked to get involved in the co-creation. Fantastic.
Well, not so much asked, we sort of invited ourselves.
Invited. Yeah, nice. Elbows in, right? I like it, yeah. Katerina, Gustavo, any thoughts on that?
I think at Solvay, so I'm Katarina, I'm leading the HR services team at Solvay. And for us, I would say also there was an important role of, okay, defining what are the business problems, what are the business objectives and problems that we're trying to solve. And also a bit, not imposing, but defining our place as HR as part of the solution for those problems. One example I can share is that we've, well, as many other companies, recently identified that we had a very complex technology behind supply chain, finance, procurement, and as many other companies, we wanted to move into the cloud and to migrate our SAP on-prem solution to a cloud version. And so what's the role of HR on that, right? And we've defined that role of HR, right? So both from a kind of connecting piece to all of the other streams, right? Defining, okay, how will we do change management to make this not about a technology change, but rather about addressing a business need and making sure that we overcome the errors of the past and we just don't migrate technology to technology, but really identifying the business problems behind it. And how can we as HR connect with finance, with supply chain to really migrate to a new solution that is aligned with our business strategy and the culture that we are defining for ourselves in the future. But also, in the basics, right, even in the technology, what is the role that the HR system should have in how it communicates into the SAP solution that we have also, right? Because we have a single source of truth, and to make things flow means that we are also having one company where HR is playing that role, both from a connecting point and from a technology point.
It's nice to hear, isn't it? Because it does sound like, the fabled let's get a seat at the table is perhaps the wrong conversation. It's let's collectively sort out what the business challenge is and what we can all do collectively to solve it, which you can do around a table or whatever, right? It doesn't really matter. It isn't about being in certain strategic pinpoints in the map. It's going to the problem, working it out together. So I love that. There's a more collegiate feel to that, isn't there? So that's great. Gustavo.
Well, my name is Gustavo Vitti. I recently came here to Amsterdam. I was working in a company based in Brazil. Basically, I feel so interested in this story that Mark was sharing. How do you shift an HR to be more strategic? I work with only 2 CEOs my whole life in 4 different companies. 2 companies with the first one for 14 years, and right now I'm in the second company with the second CEO. And one of the reasons why I love work with them is because they really focus and they see the value of people and HR. Nice. So I just came back from Romania. I was with my CEO. He was like, "Hey, you needed to come with me in this trip." So this is something that for me, I think it's really meaningful when you have a CEO that supports and understands the value of an HR as a really not business partner, but like really business partner itself. Thinking about collaboration and ecosystem, by now this is one of the biggest challenges that I have right now in front of me. I like to think 2 things. The first one, usually we as HR, we don't do stuff. We don't create collaboration. We don't create ecosystem. We create mechanisms that enable and make leaders accountable for creating that. Right. And I think there's 4 main mechanisms HR can use to do that. They are, we all know, hiring, performance review, rewards or incentives, and what I call ways of working, right? And if you think about if collaboration is a big issue, is something that we need and we want to leverage, we need to look for those 4 mechanisms and understand if they are they're looking for it. They are designed to promote that. For example, in hiring, do you look for if the person is collaborative or not in her previous past experience? Performance review, do you assess and do better gradings or better performance review if people that are more collaborative or not? How much collaboration is accounting on a performance review? Incentives or rewards, do you pay more or do you pay any bonus if the person collaborates more with each other? Or do you design your targets that are going to be paying your bonus and cross-collaboration targets, for example? And ways of working pretty much the same. How do you communicate to the company, so on and so forth. So I see ourselves as an HR more of a creating these mechanisms, making sure that leaders understand what is expected from them and make sure that they're accountable for that. Like, this is how I believe that we could.
Kind of comes back to our opening talk, doesn't it? About recognizing it and then creating the habitual nature of it to bring it to life. And I was thinking about artificial intelligence having hallucinations. I think some boards have hallucinations about how collaborative they are. Because I say, yeah, of course we're collaborative. And you look under the hood and you follow workflows and meetings. They're not collaborative. They're almost against each other and fighting turf wars and territorial things. So I think there's something important about us busting that myth, right? And going, this is what collaboration actually looks like. And some of the levers you're talking about are the instances we can map as strengthening that through results and so on. So that's lovely. And I know lots of companies think they're collaborative and go, our next step is to go agile. And guess what? It doesn't work. Why? Because they weren't collaborative in the first place. Agile doesn't make you collaborative if you're not collaborative already. So I love that. So that's great. Now, I think there are some elements of building strategies to kind of create partnerships like we've just been talking about as a more dynamic and, I suppose, normalised thing. So any experiences you've got about how you can kind of build in strategies that make those partnerships come to life and be a more natural state of order? Have you got anything in mind about those? So when we really want to get partnerships going, because that can sometimes be outside of the organisation as well. Anything spring to mind about that? Building partnerships.
So the way that I see this is you needed to create a sort of like a foundation in the company first. Where the collaboration can flow, right? There's always everything that we're going to be doing in our companies, that there's always a foundation part of it. By the way, I discussed this with Katarina the other day. when you look for companies that they try to join forces together, we can have many examples. We can have Daimler Chrysler, you can have Sony Ericsson, you can have Google and Android. And my research on what made some succeed and others don't, it's culture.
Right.
Like when we have a common culture and ways of working. For example, one of the chaos that we're living in my company right now is some people they use G Suite, other people they use MS Office. I know this sounds silly, but you create like chaos in the organization. People don't collaborate each other because, oh, that team, they use Google Slides. Oh, the other team, they use PowerPoint. It sounds a silly thing, but if you don't create a foundation saying, the tools that we use to communicate ourselves are the same, and our culture is living on the same. Because if you understand the other person's culture, you understand what to expect from her or from him. This creates a psychological environment where you can say, hey, I need your help, or I understood that you said that, but looks like you said something else. Can you tell me what you really want to say with that? So I think culture, when you have a company that created this culture, implemented this culture, people live this culture, and you don't allow silos of culture. Okay, the finance team, they have this culture, the legal team, they have the other culture. So this is the moment where we break the barriers and people can understand each other. So one of the reasons why the world has borders is because people speak different languages and they have different cultures. And by the way, sometimes it's healthy for them to have that. But you don't want to have that inside of your organization. So I think I would probably mention those two things as a foundation for it. Tools, or what I call ways of working, and culture, speaking the same language.
Yeah, it's a good way to look at what is a tradition that you want to maintain because it will keep you stable throughout, and something you can let go because you can imbue somebody else's thoughts or language or tools that actually is probably better, and it's all about that, isn't it? You're not hanging on to it for nostalgic reasons, are you? It's got a purpose, hasn't it? Yeah. Mark, I think you were going to come in on partnerships, creating partnerships. Do you want to do that?
So I was triggered by your point about having mechanisms, right? So I think this is really key if you're trying to get people to collaborate that are not collaborating. We had the same thing, right? So NEXPERIA has business groups that make products and a sales group that sells those products. And they report differently up in the organization. And we want them to collaborate, and they don't. Right? So they constantly have meetings, and then they talk about what the other side should do. And they don't get to sort of, for some reason, they don't think, oh, why am I not talking with that person about their work, right? So one of the things that we try to do is make it matter. Right? So in the reinforcement, in the performance metrics, when we talk about people, are they curious? Are they actively asking other people's opinions or not? And for the people that are doing that, are we giving them positive feedback? Are we giving them, bad performance appraisals if they don't do that? Are we asking managers to look for that? So we started campaigning on that a bit more. And then that started to slowly change. So now we actually see more meetings where people say, well, we have a collective interest. Let's invite sales and the business group and then try to figure out the problem instead of, similar to HR, the business group figuring out the problem, figuring out how sales can contribute to that, and then letting sales know how they can contribute. So making it matter, I think, is a key thing.
That's nice. That took me back to a law you might have come across called Conway's Law. And it says the way your organisation is designed is how your communication flows, no matter what the schematic tells you. And that's a real indicator there. If that communication is flowing on inclusive meetings that have really good outcomes, that are helping people with the distinct parts of their agenda, but they're combining, that is a big indicator things are working more sweetly and more harmoniously, right? Cool. Katarina, on that?
Yeah, I think for us, we have a couple of defining moments at Solvay that changed the way we do collaboration with other teams. On the one side, of course, as every company, the pandemic, right? And before that, I think collaboration was a lot more focused per site, per country, and people had their normal habits of how they collaborate, their networks, and it worked quite seamlessly. But when everyone went home, everything needed to be reset, right? And that posed a challenge and an opportunity. But before I get to how we address that, I think there's a second reality at Solvay, which is the fact that we are a science company, an industrial company. And so we have a heavy footprint of blue-collar workers, which also means that every industrial site is a community in itself, is a living organism that has its own network and its own reference points. And when we talk about cross-team collaboration and our very corporate way of looking at it, it's also hard a lot of times for the local community that is an industrial site to accept this, often perceived as an imposed reality of what we are trying to call collaboration. Well, we know how to do it. Don't come here and tell us how we should do this, right? And I think the way we've been trying to address, and I think where I've seen it be more successful at Solvay to address both the post-pandemic and this industrial side reality is one, really rethinking and rebuilding some of these communities and collaborations in a more virtual world. And I think someone in the morning spoke about the employee resource groups, the ERGs, and that's, I think, something that we've seen as quite effective in really getting people around a purpose that they really identify with, volunteer to it, and create kind of this living organisms that work towards something. Another example we have in some of our bigger sites is this, we create also this let's teams, as we call them, and we focus them around kind of let's exercise, let's express your art. And these teams, which are composed again by volunteers from the different parts of the company, with all of the functions represented, then create a purpose for people to come back to the office and to collaborate around different topics, and then reestablish those networks that will need to continue to flow in a more virtual world. And then to address the industrial part, what we've also started to do more recently is to really get closer to the industrial sites, right? To really understand, okay, what is it, the practice? What is it? Start from the management, from the business group directors to industrial directors to site managers, and understanding what's working and what's not working. Not just imposing what we see in a corporate world as the solution, but co-building the solution and involving them as part of the solution to make those networks also function and flow all the way through the organizations across the different functions.
I think that's talking to just understanding the nature of those communities and partnerships and so on. So when we try and force partnerships or collaboration, when we almost have a bit of what I call collaboration theatre, you know, those fake collaborative things that may be social or innovation jams or whatever, they feel a bit episodic and flimsy, but you're talking about something that's deeply daily and personal and very alive and vivid. And I think if we understand that, then we kind of know where the partnership points are, where people come together. Are you seeing anything about learning as another form of where people can create more communities and partnerships and within an ecosystem? Because we have communities of practice, we have, you know, specialists and people looking in different career paths. Are you seeing learning as a thing that permeates through and creates its own partnerships? Any examples of that?
I think it may be more than learning is experiences, right?
Right.
I think we all have friends from college or friends from high school that you remember the experience. It was memorable for you, and some of them participate on that. Learning is part of it as well. I remember I am a physicist. Remember my quantum physics too. Like everybody remembers, everybody who participated in that test. Yeah. Remember the 12 pages we need to finish in 4 hours. It was like a nightmare. We talk until now. I was with some of those guys, some of those friends a few weeks ago. So it providing experience, and I don't mean the hugging 3HR, who's like, okay, let's make a team bond. Yeah, hooray, kumbaya. Yeah. No, I mean like sometimes you need that. For example, in Prosus, we use one methodology that we copy from Harvard and BCG. Yep. The name is PTO. Predictability, teaming, and open communication. In the beginning, it's quite weird because you are going to talk a little bit about yourself. You're asked to put some personal pictures of yourself, but you kind of like this experience is weird for everybody who participated the first time. People are usually cross-armed in the beginning, and then they were like, "Oh man, I didn't know you love skiing the Dolomites. Me too. Let's get together next year." So learning is also one part of it, which I think it probably is one of the most bonding ones. But I would put that bucket slightly bigger, call it experience, that you create memorable moments of it.
I think you described something way above a transactional partnership, didn't you? Something that's a bit deeper and perhaps a bit more felt and embodied and so on. Yeah, definitely. Love all that. Yeah, we don't hug trees, do we? Do we? We don't, do we? No. Any other thoughts on that in terms of how communities are created and fostered and nurtured, and especially when it comes to, you know, trying to get diverse teams to just get the right sense of how they can play together?
I think in picking on your topic about learning, I wanted to give an example about a leadership learning experience that we've had at Solvay. A couple of years ago, we did a leadership academy with some of the top leaders. Well, we had leadership development for different levels of leadership, and one of them was indeed for top leaders. And this was shortly before we went through a big spin-off of the company. And I think the relationships that were created in that leadership academy course between the leaders within supply chain and from one part of the business or HR were essential to the success of the spin-off and the collaboration that came afterwards. So I think that was one example of how I see learning also playing an interesting part in promoting these collaborations and helping establish these networks. And it doesn't need to be the the traditional face-to-face learning that you go to a site and do this and establish. But I think even in a remote world, this can still be a good prompt for supporting the collaborations and establishing those networks.
I think that's a really important point about the fact that there isn't an immediacy sometimes in building those relationships and partnerships, because it might manifest months or even years down the line when it mattered then, but you'd built the relationship, you'd built the understanding, you'd built the appreciation, I suppose, and then it came into play at a future point that you probably couldn't have predicted. So it's almost like we stock people up with the potential to partner and collaborate, even if we're not going to force them to, but it will come in good when it's ready to be good, right? Yeah. Anything, Mark?
Yeah, that was thinking about that. I think the problem is that very often it doesn't. Right? Well, we create an infrastructure.
Yeah.
And then, so for instance, you buy a collaboration platform and the vendor's excited about it, HR is excited about it. Only downside, zero traffic. Right? Nobody comes into it. Or a best practice sharing platform. Right? Everybody's bombarding it with their practice, but nobody's actually reading those practices. I think the key learning from that is, for me, is you have to understand the self-interest. Why are people interested? So LinkedIn, for instance, massive success, right? Internal Yammer page, not so much. Why is that? Right. So if you understand the self-interest that people have on LinkedIn, and you know why it's a success, and if you can reinforce something that plays into self-interest, then you can have a successful platform. So for learning, for instance, understanding if there's an appetite to know what other people are doing, if that's a yes, then a collaboration platform can work. If you simply want other people to learn new stuff that they feel no urgency for, then you need something different.
Yeah. It's not a case of if you build it, they will collaborate, right? It just doesn't happen, does it?
No, exactly.
And all we create is digital ghost towns, don't we? Do you know what I mean? It's not a good thing, is it? I had a real flashback when you said Yammer, because there was a lot of people that thought, this is it, we've cracked internal participate. No, we haven't. Facebook for work? No, we haven't. Do you know what I mean? There are lots of examples of this. And I don't know if you're Slack users in the room. I mean, it's both amazing and a pain in the arse as well. Ping, 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 ping. It's because people don't get how to use that tech to really collaborate, right? They almost spam yourself with it. So we don't want that, do we? So you raised an interesting point about technology, and that kind of links, I think, to what we're trying to do with collaborations and partnerships and an ecosystem approach, right? Is better outcomes, maybe swifter, maybe more participative, maybe more certain in terms of outcomes. Any thoughts or advice about how you kind of keep that longer term big outcome in mind when you're trying to get that strength and partnership and collaboration spirit going? Because that should be the thing that everybody goes, yeah, but maybe they don't always have the same excitement for it, do they? Any thoughts, Katarina?
Yeah, I can start. And like I mentioned, Solvay went through a spin-off of 60% of his business a couple of years ago. It's been quite an intense journey of transformation for everyone involved. And I think the role that HR played in preparing and driving the spin-off was key to achieve the long-term success of it. And I would give that as an example because a bit related to what you were saying before, Mark, of HR playing a part in aligning with the business strategy. Well, here we were, one company, 160 years old, having to define the strategy, the business strategy for two different companies around the reasons why the company was spinning off and what's HR's role in it, right? And so having to define or lay the basics of what we interpreted to be the right HR strategy for each of the two companies, which would then be split, was key to the success, in my opinion, of the spin-off and of the two organizations of HR to then define their own roadmaps going forward, right? So starting from the long-term strategy, the business purpose of why we were trying to spin off and create two different companies, and what's the right fit-for-purpose HR with the right, well, structure, operating model, roles, investment, technology. So that was a very important one for us, to really be involved, be at the table, check with the business leaders every step of the way, and make sure that the HR strategy was in close alignment with the business strategy there.
And really difficult because you're trying to maintain a sense of collaborative spirit about a decoupling, which almost seems like it's the opposite of collaboration. It's splitting up, right? But you don't want to do it with, you know, malintent or missing things or whatever. You want to keep that special connection, don't you? So I think that shows the power of us knowing the business goals, but also working on the relational, cultural, feelings-based stuff, which is really important. So, and
it was key. I think 2 years after this collaboration that we've kept, and we've had a TSA to deliver some services to ScienceCo, the other company, and it's been essential to keep this collaboration and to keep this spirit of we're here with a common purpose. We understand, and we make it work.
Yeah. When I said decoupling, I had that flashback of Chris Martin and Gwyneth Paltrow. I didn't really know where that came from then. But anyway, any other thoughts about long-term goals and how we can really sort of say, it might be over there, but we need you to collaborate and partner in pursuit of that?
First of all, I fully agree with what Katarina. I was having a feeling of how hard it was this period of time, because I'm living a little bit right now.
Okay.
Prosus, for those who doesn't know that, Prosus is a conglomerate of companies. We have around 100 different companies in the portfolio, of which we control 12. Right. We have a big stake in 14, and the remaining we have 10 or 15% of stake. And right now we're bringing, they were working 1 year ago, they were working mostly isolated between each other. We were like, okay, we're going to invest on you. Yep. We expect you to grow, and then maybe in the future we're going to be selling. Right now, Fabrizio, which is the CEO, which is the guy that I was working in my previous company, he has a very different view. He was like, I think it's more of the philosopher Aristotle. Yeah. The whole is bigger than the sum of the parts. I think it was something around those lines. And right now, what we're trying to do is, as you mentioned, we're trying to set the vision. Yeah. Look, and by the way, last week we spent 3 days with 55 CEOs and founders of those companies, trying to tell them, like, look, these are the value of the ecosystem. This is how we can leverage it. Try to convince them to grab the vision. Yeah. The second question, when you double click, the second question is, okay, what is the blueprint? How are we going to do that? Mm-hmm. And that is a moment of vulnerability. We say, I don't know. Yeah. What I do know is that we're going to be testing. Yeah. Okay? And on the second double click on the how we're going to be doing that, there's one part which is me and my team, by the way. I was just having a lunch with one person that is here discussing that. We need, for example, innovation. We're going to do a lot of experimentation. For example, there's 2 assets that we have in Latin America. One is iFood, which is a food delivery company. The other one is a company called NEXPERIA. We just purchased them. There's another 2, OLX, and the other one is Simpla. And right now we say, maybe if these 4 companies, they work together, maybe we can do better than if they were working isolated. How are we going to do that? The short answer, we don't know. But one thing we know, if one company works and on experimentation basis, iterative basis, focus on data, and every week they change, and they keep trying to find better ways. And the other company have this extensive 6 months planning before launching whatever product they're going to be launching. They won't work. It won't work. So we needed to discuss and agree of the foundations of our partnership, the foundations of an ecosystem. Right now, this is exactly the discussion that we're having right now. Another case is, for you to have experimentation and innovation, you needed to allow people to fail. I love a phrase from Jeff Bezos who said, we are the best place for you to fail. Right. And this is so cool. This is so cool. I remember when I did my first failure in my previous company with Fabrizio, I spent $1 million in a project that I was supposed to hire 200 people, and I hired only 6. And I came to him ashamed. I was like, man, this guy's going to fire me. And he was like, okay, what did you learn with it? And I was like, oh, I learned that I should start small and then scale a little bit and then scale and then scale. Okay, got it. Do you mind in sharing this experience with other 60 leaders? I was like, that's just fine. And I was like promoted. I was like teaching everybody how to don't do stuff. So having this mindset, aligned mindsets of how we're going to be innovating, what failure mean for us, this kind of stuff. This is our latest hypothesis. This is where we are right now. Probably I need to learn more with Katarina here. But so setting the vision, aligning the foundation, and then the execution is just a matter of iteration and finding a way.
Did you spend all that money?
Yeah, but I spent more than that.
And he
But in
still
order-
didn't get fired? What a great CEO.
To hire
that
6 people, 6. It was a
Yeah.
mistake.
I love that. He invests in you big time. That just made me think about how you also survived 3 days with 55 CEOs. You must be made of some good stuff. However, I love the spirit of what you're saying there, which is innovation is a sort of thing that can cut across and become a common denominator for people to go, well, this is innovative, so therefore it's new, therefore I'm going into a different space, and maybe the mindset shifts a little bit there, and they can detach from their previous anchoring into something that's a bit more inventive. So I love that kind of sense, really, that creates that ecosystem of stuff. So yeah, long-term goals and the whole kind of how we galvanize people, focus, that kind of thing. Anything spring to mind for you, Mark?
Of course, yeah. So
Good.
I like what you said about sort of linking into a strategy, right? I think we, at NEXPERIA, we did that not so great at first, right? So our CEO, who's a self-made billionaire, so lots of money invested in the company, had this goal of growing from 2 billion revenue to 10 billion revenue. Massive growth, great. So we had like a tagline, we want to show profitable growth, go from 2 to 10, yay. And then we asked our engineers about that, like, how do you feel about that? And you can pretty much guess their response, right? I don't care.
Yeah. Or what's my cut?
Yeah, so their cut is 0, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it really doesn't matter that much to them. So we had to really change the narrative from what was important to the CEO and the shareholders to something that people can relate to and would like to contribute to, which was more sustainable energy consumption. Right? So if you can make the world more sustainable and you can contribute to that, then you can matter. Right? So if providing an opportunity to do that is something that gets a lot of engineers fired up. So for us to change the narrative to finding this purpose, but also redefining that purpose a little bit, and then working our way back to, okay, that's what it means to you right now. That helped, and then coming back to that overarching purpose of making the world more sustainable together, providing more sustainable solutions. That helped with collaboration, because that's what we're all working towards.
And that's not an untruth, is it? What you've described there is the what is the 10 bill, right? The how is the stuff that people get excited about and their impact during the... They may not worry about the outcome as much as the CEO might do, but they're going to have a whole ton of attachment to the method of getting there and creating that sustainable stuff.
Well, sort of. So I think that the conclusion was also the what was not the 10 bill. That was just the what for the CEO.
That was like an outcome, wasn't it?
That, yes, is one of the byproducts.
Yeah.
But the sort of the what was providing more sustainable energy.
Yeah.
And if that is the thing that you're pursuing, then that's what you can be fired up for.
Yeah, love it. We've got 11 minutes and 45 seconds. So does anybody that was really precise, wasn't it? It's now 41. Anybody got a question or a thought they want to share with the panel? Because we thought we'd get some interaction going. A, to make sure you're still awake. And B, why not, right? So any thoughts, any questions? Yeah, excellent reasons. You know what I'm saying? Anybody got a thought or a question? This could backfire on us, by the way. I'm just going to keep talking and I might pick up. Yay, we have someone over there. Thank you for raising the hand. Shalva, have you're going to steal a mic? Yeah, right, we'll have to do a bit of mic sharing. Thank you for doing the first interaction of the day.
Hello, good afternoon. I'm Evelina. I work with Valeo Foods Group, a food manufacturing business. So the example you shared, I think it was Mark, on your collaboration tool or platform is part of your culture. Very much resonated. Can you maybe tell a little bit more on how you guys made steps forward in that? How you made a success, out of getting everybody onto that same platform?
I would hesitate to say it's a huge success, but the small successes that we did have were about really talking to the tech people and trying to figure out what they find interesting about each other. If there's a common ground between where someone wants to send something that someone else is interested in seeing, then those are the things that we ask people to post and see if there would be a response on. And we started small with a couple of like really geeky tech subjects, and that worked. So also our LinkedIn campaign is now a bit tweaked to that, right, where we show really dorky tech stuff that other similar interested people really like. So that part worked, but it's not massive, right? It's not the huge success of everybody spending lots of time on the collaboration platform.
Nice.
Maybe to add to that, one thing that we do is we have included in our engagement survey, in our pulse survey, the question to employees of what is it for you the most meaningful way of getting communication? Is it from your manager on one-on-ones, or through the intranet, or through, and then we try to invest on those channels that are identified by the people as the most meaningful for them. So we've kind of tried to be agile that way.
So what were the most?
Yeah.
Well, it's in general, it's communication with the first manager, right? So we try to do then to disseminate the communication through the management and make sure that the managers keep that discipline of then kind of cascading the information to managers. That's in general what we've seen to be the most valued means of communication, of getting information, more than the corporate yammers or intranet posts.
I've said it before, I'll say it again, intranets are where information goes to die. Any other thoughts or questions on any of that collaboration?
I have one.
Hey, lovely.
Hi, I'm also Caterina, but Mora is my last name. I work as a global head at Adevinta, so also a group and not as big as Prosus. But what we've done is we've had 4 transformations in 4 years, and the one thing that we've done very, very strongly is to scale the culture we had into something bigger, something new that everyone that kept on joining felt that they could belong. What would be the one key factor that you would say that you would successfully scale your culture, so to speak, in your experience?
Cool. 4 transformations in 4 years. Well done.
Yes.
Just thought I'd add that. One factor.
I don't know if I can say one factor, but I will maybe share a bit the experience, because as we just exited a spin-off, we did need to redefine our culture as a newly formed company that is 40% of what we used to be in the past. And I will say, actually, looking at the results of our previous Pulse survey, we were actually, it was one of our strengths, I think, kind of identifying with the culture and feeling that they can kind of speak in the name of the culture and being aware of the culture, the purpose, the values, and the behaviors. And I think what worked well to make that successful was that we started, again, it goes back to collaboration, right? We co-created it with the business, right? We didn't sit down in the HRLT and write down, okay, this is our culture now, you live it, right? We did do a whole exercise of sitting down with managers, with all, and it wasn't just kind of the top management. We asked every single team to do sort of self-led workshops and to then distill back to the talent and culture team the outcome of what people saw as the behaviors that they identified with, that they related with. And then we built the culture from that, right? So also bottom up together with what we, from a strategy perspective, wanted to be as a company. And I think that's been quite successful, right? To congregate and build a culture and then translate it. Now we're at the moment of, okay, we have the behaviors, we have the main highlights are defined, and now we're translating it into, okay, what does it mean in terms of me as a manager, what is it expected? And I think this progressive rollout and really involving people has made a difference.
Nice. If I can just add one thing, I love the way that you mentioned that. But one thing that we did, which was similar to what Solveig did with Catarina, we got the CEOs of the majority-owned companies. We designed what we call right now the Prosus way, all together with them. And we spent a whole week in Stanford because we were learning the science behind the behaviors that makes us successful. Right? So it's not something that I like or Fabricio like, it's something that there's science behind it. So you get even a skeptical one, because if you want to go in a debate where my preference is this, your preference is that, like, yeah, you're going to win, you're going to leave, or you might pretend that you agree, but we're going to different paths. But if there's science behind it, we got this professor from, I think from MIT, Andrew McAfee. He wrote a book called The Geek Way. We asked everyone to read, and then we invited him. By the way, I invited him to come to the board. Right now, even the board speaks the Prosus way language, because the whole thing on culture starts on the leadership, right? And if people say, and there's a syndrome that we call the syndrome of not made here. If people say, okay, I didn't participate on this, the chance of rejection is increased by 87%. I just made up the 87%, but it's like increased quite high. But when we involve them, when you bring them together, when you put reasons behind, and then after that we say we agree, and then is a tsunami of cultural things. We put culture everywhere, including in our last year Christmas gift we gave people. There's like a cultural a symbolism behind it. Fabrice, our CEO, last Wednesday we had our Prosus strategy share, which was the moment that we represent the whole company results, last year results. He entered on a jet ski, because jet ski is a symbolism of experimentation for us. Because we say, look, our company is like this big transatlantic. I know your company is way more. But in a tech company, you have like this transatlantic. It's quite hard for you to change that. But you can launch some jet skis to explore and say, oh, I found something nice here. But instead of changing the whole boat there, you send a speedy boat. And wow, I confirm there is a real thing here. And then you change the transatlantic. Not the Titanic, the transatlantic.
Nice, yeah. Phew.
And then like there's a lot of symbolism behind it, and we even measure that on the engagement survey. We measure: do you believe that we innovate this way or that way? What about your leader? What about your function leader? What about the rest of the company? So we ask those people to kind of like really measure, understand what are the gaps that we're having. But when there is reason behind, there is rationale behind, there's science behind, man, you can come here and let's have a discussion. Bring your data.
Nice. I don't know why I've got in the metaphor of my mind, like the surfer community when you talked about jet skiing. I mean, because there's individual feats of athleticism, but the surfer community are so tight with each other about helping each other get better at it and so on. But jet skis, I didn't think we'd talk about jet skis today, so thank you for that addition. We've got 3 minutes left. Any more questions from anybody in the audience? Any more? Yeah, we've got one more. Look, you're getting really good at this now.
We get contaminated basically together. So Maria Ursu here from Booking.com. A question about the culture of collaboration, because it has been proven difficult to measure, right? So if you ask currently a question, is it easy to collaborate with you?
Yeah.
Pulse survey is through the roof. Is it difficult to collaborate with other departments? Oh my God, they're so difficult, right? So there's this perception of I'm easier to collaborate than others. So the question is, how do you measure actually collaboration in your companies, and how often to really know it's an effective collaboration and not just on paper?
Oh, we've run out of time. No, we haven't really run out of time. That's such a tough question, but you're going to have a go, right? How do we measure this stuff? That's wickedly challenging in some respects. But
Yeah, so I can answer it simply. We have employee listing once every 2 years with a survey.
Yeah.
So that gets some data that is seemingly objective. I would say 99.9% of the insight is just tacit knowledge that people observe. So it doesn't take a genius to figure out that two people are not collaborating.
Yeah.
And then you can wait for data, or you can do something about it.
Yeah.
That's just
So signals and act. Yeah. Gustavo?
Just to chip in, so 2 things. The first one is we have this survey. By the way, there's the guy who make all of my surveys. He's just behind, a super scientist. He's the science behind it. He's the data science behind Prosus. So we do ask questions on, do you feel that you can expect collaboration within your function, within your team, within across the company? So we kind of get a sense of it. But we also try to look for data that we call ONA, organizational network analysis, for example. And by the way, we don't see any messages, but we track who people interact with on Slack, meetings, and send emails. People still send emails until now. And then you understand if which functions are collaborating more with others. By the way, one fun fact of this experiment, we realized who are the real connectors. Say, wow. And then we realized that we have 100 leaders that are super influencer.
Yep.
They're the one on the coffee, like the coffee place and the virtual coffee place. They're the one like talking to everybody. So whenever we want to leak a message or we want to communicate something, yeah, it's true. We send to them and say, hey, spread this message out. And next day, everything is done. But maybe I would just add on the ONA. And,
Nice. Even better, say, don't tell anyone. And guess what? They tell everyone. Anything to add, Katarina?
I don't think we have well, of course, we do the engagement survey and we listen to it and we look at it. I don't think we have a very objective scientific measure for collaboration, rather than indeed looking at the data from the engagement survey and then checking in with the teams. And then again, I think collaboration is actually one of the behaviors in the new culture. So that's, again, then making sure that as we implement initiatives, the cross-collaboration is there. But it's not an easy nut to crack, for sure.
I think I'm going to sit with that question for a bit longer because I love it. I haven't got an answer for it. But I do recall there was a little burst of interest in social network analysis. And I don't see that as strongly as I thought I would in doing the mapping kind of relationships, but some people are using social network analysis. That can tell you where there are trails of connections, and you can look at the results sometimes and go, that's because of the strength of those connections. So social network analysis might have something to bear. We're out of time, but what a great conversation. Thank you. I'm going to leave you with a quote, actually. You know the phrase, the meek shall inherit the earth? I think what we've heard today, and I'm glad you gave me the term, Gustavo, because I've just written it down, the geeks will communalize the earth. Because I think if we get the geeks together, they create communities really well, right? So let's go geeky mad first, and then everybody else will miss out and create communities and partnerships. So I love that came through. I don't know whether it's true or not, but thank you very much. So thanks very much, Katerina, Mark, and Gustavo, for some lovely wisdom, and thank you. That's great. Really appreciate it.